Jimmy Jive, and you're listening to Motor City Rock Talk. Today, my guest is a guitarist, lead vocalist for a kind of punk metal rock kind of thing that started in the 80s, the early 80s, and has evolved over time, different levels and different types of music. They're still out and at it today. Like, so many, they're still trudging away and keeping the rock and roll thing in Detroit happening, and that to me is totally cool. Anyway, my guest today, like I say, is a lead vocalist and guitarist for a band called the Nasties on Perry. How you doing, Ron?
I'm doing good. How are you doing? Thanks
I'm
for having me.
My pleasure. All right, let's start out first with a little background. Tell me basically where you grew up, the area you were from, and some of your earliest influences that got you into deciding to play in a band, rock and roll and punk or whatever. Let's go over a little history.
Okay, yeah, I grew up in Garden City, actually,
All
just
right.
not far from Ford and Middle Belt there. And close to me were like the Token Lounge and the Studio Lounge. And I would sneak in there into the Studio Lounge when I was underage to see bands like Salem Witchcraft and Muggsy and Bogart. Those are kind of really some of the first influences I had. I mean, I listened to the stuff on the radio, and I was always into music and, the Eric Claptons and the Led
Right.
Zeppelins. And it wasn't until I started going to see local bands, and there were so many good ones then that I said to myself that this is what I want to do. Just kind of went from there. Like I say, I can remember seeing Salem Witchcraft at the Studio Lounge and just being blown away with it. I mean, they were in the full regalia. They had the outfits. The keyboard player had the big old mahogany Leslies with the spinning horns, that were just kind of mesmerizing and all hypnotizing.
Let's talk about the early formation of the Nasties. From what I understand, it started, like I said, the early 80s, and you were involved in a battle of the bands at your high school that you won. How did that go about it? Was this a yearly thing, or was this just something they had that year?
That was actually before I was in the band. Like the band was together for about 9 months before I was in it. So what had happened was they had entered the battle of the bands at their school, Churchill High School.
Oh, okay.
Or they were the representatives from Churchill High School. The WRIF High School Battle of the Bands thing at the Royal Oak Music Theater. They won. Not long after, the bass player had moved to Texas, had to go to Texas for some reason, got a job there. I don't know. So they were looking for, and they were a three-piece. He was the bass player and the singer, and they were looking for a singer and a bass player. So I was a singer. The high school band I had just broken up, and I saw their ad. No, actually, I heard Stevie on the radio. My band had broken up, so I came in and brought a bass player with me. After having heard Steve, drummer, whose uncle was Fred Schmidt, was on Night Call. I think it was on WRIF, the Sunday night show. People would call in, and he called in and talked about how their bass player left, and he needed a new bass player, so and a singer. So I contacted him from there, brought my bass player into the band, and that's when we really started playing bars, because they hadn't played bars up until that point. So this was really all of our first professional experience playing out real gigs.
It would have been, like you said, being from the Garden City area, you're talking Studio Lounge, Token Lounge, those type of places.
Yeah, those were some of our first gigs. Like I said, I used to sneak into the Studio Lounge because it's a few miles from my house. But, we ended up playing, we played as many places. We took any gig we could get. We played everywhere in Detroit in the 80s, everywhere there was to play. And we opened up for all the bands that were already established, the Seduces and Halloweens and Weapons and Almighty Strut. We used to do a lot of shows with them. We learned a lot from them because those guys were all, good 8-10 years older than us.
Yeah, seasoned veteran. Were you playing like the Ritz too, and Harpo's, those places too, more or less?
Oh yeah, we played all those places. The Ritz, Harpo, New York at the time. The Side Street Lounge out in I think it was Lincoln Park or Allen Park. Yeah, everywhere there was, we played festivals, events, you name it.
Anywhere you could get your foot in to get a gig, pretty much.
Yeah, we didn't care if we had to play for free. We did.
Now, did the band back in those days, when you're out playing these bars and all that, were you formatting original material, or were you doing doing covers or a little both?
Well, we did some covers. Like most of the bands that were, to get gigs, you had to do some covers. But
Right.
I mean, most of what we were doing was original stuff. That was what we were really about. We
Mm-hmm.
didn't do any straight cover gigs like places where, you had to go in and play 3 sets of
Right.
covers. We'd pepper in a few songs in our
Sure.
set that people would know to kind of draw them in so they'd listen to our stuff.
Were you trying with the name, the Nasties and all that? Did that play in any way into what type of band you were trying to be? Whether you're going to be hard rock, metal, punk, or whatever. Did that play into that at all? Did you have any preconceived notion of what you wanted the band to be?
Well, the original guitar player, Tony Morocco, who was that we joined, I came in and it was Tony and the drummer Steve, and we just lost Tony this year. Calling it the Nasties was his idea, and he was kind of a guy who reveled in his own bad attitude. So kind of it was he would stick his tongue out at people and give them the finger, and it was all kind of a big shtick that he did. And he called himself the Dog, and wore a dog collar and kind of went crazy during guitar solos.
Sure.
Yeah, there was definitely a show, and eventually, as time went on, started adding like really outrageous songs to the set. I would always say that bands like Whitesnake and what have you, we'd sit around listening to the album, and I go, listen, they're talking about sex, but they're just dancing around it. Why doesn't anybody just come right out and say it?
Yeah.
We looked at each other and went, now somebody will. So we started doing a song called "I Want to Fuck Your Brains Out,"
Yes.
which is if you listen to the lyrics, it's hilarious. It's not as dirty as it is just kind of a joke. I mean, now you can get away with that. No one would bat an eye. But at the time, we got tossed out of some places for playing that.
Now, were you guys in the process or a forethought at that time of recording? Did you do anything as far as recordings other than maybe demos? Did you go in the studio and record anything?
Yeah, we did the thing, the Detroit Rocks thing, which was like a We Are the World type thing, supporting the building of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Detroit, which they were trying to decide where to build it at that time in '85. So, we decided that needed a theme song. We wrote the song Detroit Rocks and got a bunch of friends, our buddies in Weapons helped us with that. Fred Schmidt was, knew everybody in the Detroit scene, so he kind of helped us get in touch with everybody else. All the guys that were playing around at the time came and, did a line, just like a We Are the World thing. Right. And Rob Tyner from the MC5 came in and improvised a rap in the middle, just off the top of his head, which was so cool. And they played that on LLZ for quite a while. It was on heavy rotation until we lost out on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But yeah, we did that, and we recorded a couple other songs in the studio at the time, which are somewhere on the internet now, YouTube somewhere. Wanted to do an album, but we never quite got the album out before the band broke up.
Where did you record that Detroit Rocks? Where was that recorded at?
That was done at the old schoolhouse in Ann Arbor, which
okay.
was Bankert and Henry Weck from Brownsville Station at the studio, which was a really cool place to record.
Getting all those people together, did you organize it or do you have help to put it together? Whose idea specifically was to write the song, to do it? Was it yours?
Yeah, it was that. I wrote the song. I was just sitting around listening to Doug Podell talk about they had a campaign going, a petition or something to get the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame built in Detroit. And I said, that deserves a song, like a fanfare or something. So I wrote that song, and it was actually Fred Schmidt from Weapons that helped me put it together, because, like I say, he knew everybody in the Detroit scene. He got in contact with everyone he knew. He had played with Rob Tyner in Blood Brothers. So he was able to get Rob to come out and participate in it too. It was very cool. It was probably one of the highlights of my pitiful career.
Because nobody else was thinking of doing it. Nobody else was doing it. And it needed to be done. Somebody needed to step forward. And it's cool that you guys did that. Not only did it, but were able to incorporate these other bands to get on board with the idea, and then to get Wheels to actually do it and actually promote it. It was a win-win scenario all the way around. It is too bad how it happened, but we all know the story on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's a joke, but that it's in Cleveland. It should have been in Detroit, but whatever.
One of the lines that Rob Tyner improvised in the song is, "They may wind up with the Hall, but Detroit will keep the fame."
Detroit, Rock City. When Kiss said that, that'll live in infamy. It'll always be the case with anybody that knows true rock and roll.
Just goes to show you the collaborative spirit of Detroiters, because, this was, it was highly competitive between the bands. I mean, everybody was friends, but it was highly competitive. But so for everyone to come together and actually, support of this idea, of getting the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I thought it was really cool because everybody checked the ego at the door and came in and was part of something.
How long did it take you guys to actually put it all together, record it, and finally get it produced to actually get on the air?
We did most of it in a day, the basic tracks. And then we had people come in and out as they were available to sing their part. All in all, it took maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks. And it was mixed by Pete Banker and Pat Schneider, who had this was back in the analog days, trying to mix 18, 20 people, how many were singing on that, was quite a chore.
Basically, you guys do that. Obviously, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame didn't come here. You say the band broke up shortly thereafter. What happened with that?
It was the 80s. Some guys in the bands were doing what people in the 80s were doing, and it got out of control. So there came a breaking point where it just kind of, there was tension everywhere. And it was too bad because, we were starting to head in a really good direction, and we had the Detroit Rocks thing under our belt to, as a calling card. So it was kind of a shame when it fell apart. Not long after that, I had another opportunity out of state. So one door closes, another one opens.
What did you do then? I had read up that there was a project you had at one time called, I believe it was the Ron Perry Connection. Was that the next stage, or was there something in between that?
No, actually what had happened is that time, the band Molly Hatchet, the old Southern rock band from Jacksonville, their singer was bad, whacked out on some demons. They were looking for another singer. So John Galvin, the keyboard player, lives in Detroit. He saw me, I think at Blondie's. We were playing Blondie's or something. I talked to him and he said, would you be interested in auditioning for Molly Hatchet because we need a singer? And I said, well, sure. So I came to Florida, started in on that, and, wrote some songs with the guys and did some rehearsals and what have you. And eventually the original lead singer came crawling back because that was his meal ticket. He promised to behave himself. So that kind of displaced me. So they didn't end up replacing him. But the guy who managed them told me that, hey, because I have another band that I can get a record deal for if they had a singer. Would you be interested in that? So that was a band called China Sky. I did that. I moved to Jacksonville, Florida, and spent the next 3 years working on the China Sky album. And we worked with some heavy hitters and, had a big record deal with CBS Records, which was a huge, CBS Sony was a huge company at the time. It's the typical story, you just because you get signed and make the album doesn't mean you're going to make it. There's a lot of things after that. CBS was getting bought out. They were putting all their money into Bruce Springsteen and Michael Jackson and, some of these other bands they just didn't promote, or they would just throw it against the wall and see if it stuck. And if it didn't, they, wouldn't get behind it. And at that point, we lost the guitar player because he was, nothing was happening. So it was just another sad story there.
Getting back to the Molly Hatchet thing just for a second. When you were in there for that period of time before the lead singer, like I said, came crawling back, did you actually tour with them or do any recording with them at all?
No, we did some recording in the studio and wrote songs. I didn't do any touring. It was a short period, but actually one of the songs I wrote for them, they used on their next album.
With the original lead singer back, obviously.
Yeah.
As for the China Sky, did you tour at all for that? Was there anything with that, or was that just...
Yeah, we were doing gigs, and then, when the whole, the guitar player left and everything fell apart, we just kind of cut our losses and abandoned it, because we all figured we could go somewhere and start something else new and, be better off.
Still young enough. I mean, you got time.
Right.
Now, as far as that band touring, was it just a local type of thing? Or were you touring around the country?
We were in the Southeast. We never quite made it out of there because we didn't have enough time. They had supposed to have toured with ZZ Top, opening for ZZ Top.
Oh, wow.
And then when everything fell apart and the guitar player left, they decided they didn't like the sound of that. And that was that. That's what happened with that. But then it's funny because about 10 years ago, I started getting phone calls from people in Europe, did you own the masters to the China Sky album? And I was like, no, Sony owns them. One of these companies said, would you like to make another China Sky album? So to get another crack at that was good because we went ahead and made another one I produced myself, which felt much better about. I think it's a much better album. This is how rock bands get cursed. This thing was cursed. It fell apart the first time, and then 10 years later we do a new album, and it got 9 out of 10 stars in Classic Rock magazine when the new Deep Purple album only got 6. So we felt pretty good about that. 6 weeks after the album comes out, the drummer died. The drummer was Bruce Crump, who was the original drummer in Molly Hatchet. At that point, then we were going to go tour Europe and do some festivals there, and then that just kind of band fell apart after Bruce died. He was kind of the glue that was holding it together.
Is that album available still? Is it out there? Did it get much distribution?
Yeah. The original one is just called China Sky, and the second one's called China Sky 2.
But the second one was what, produced by a European label then? It wasn't by CBS?
It was on Escape Records out of Manchester, England, but I produced it here at my own studio. It was mastered in Sweden, and the label was in the UK.
It sounded like you kind of fell on some bad luck in the sense that you're on the cusp.
I've lived a very Spinal Tap life.
So what do you do next? Or what did you do after that?
Well, that was the point where I had my own band, the Ron Perry Connection. That was another thing where it was, it was a moneymaker. We did our own albums, but we also did covers if we had to. Any kind of gig we could get, we took it because I made a living off that for a good 16 or 17 years. We had to play. We played 5, 6, sometimes 7 days a week.
That's a heavy schedule. How long did that go on as far as the Ron Perry Connection? How long did that last before you decided to re-up with the Nasties?
Yeah, well, that was a good 16 or 17 years, and then by the time I was done with that, I needed a break, so I kind of walked away from music for a while until about 3 or 4 years ago, and I decided that time to do something again. And I was doing work in Detroit. Why not put the Nasties back together and play with the guys that started out with? And they're all great musicians. And Stevie, the drummer, went on to he played with Seduce for a while when after Chuck had left. He was in the band Face. And also in Romeo Rock in the 80s, which Romeo Rock did quite a few things.
As far as that, and as far as putting the Nasties back together again, how recent is the lineup that you have as far as the Nasties that are out now?
Well, it's about 4 years ago, I think 3 or 4 years ago, we started doing gigs. And actually, Steve wasn't available at the time, and we had Lawrence Wilson from Mob Opera play drums with us for a while, and J.D. Davis on bass. So eventually, Steve became available. Lawrence kind of was playing with Mob, and he started doing other things. He plays with Derek St. Holmes, so he really wasn't available much. Steve was happy to come back into the fold, so it's kind of we're the two original guys from the band.
Having taken that hiatus time off, like you say, where you stepped away, when you did come back, like you said, 4 years or so ago, how much, in your opinion, had the actual local music scene changed? I mean, you came from a time in the 80s where there were a ton of clubs. So many of these clubs are gone. Now you got to come into some of these different types of bars. Have you been playing more or less East Side stuff? Are you still coming over to the Token once in a while, or have plans to?
Yeah, we've played the Token several times, and we're, Sherry books a lot of our dates, and I told her just spread us around. We play Hamtramck, we'll play East Side, we'll play West Side, we'll play North Side, a place in Toledo she books. I said, put us wherever you can get us. We want to get around, and we want to get out in front of crowds, and we'd like to start doing festivals, being able to get in front of a bigger crowd. And Sherry was telling me it's kind of harder for the hard rock bands, but we're accessible, I think, in the way that a band like AC/DC is, because people like girls who don't even like hard rock like AC/DC.
Sure.
Because there's a chorus you can grab, a groove that you can stomp to. So that's kind of what we try to do.
As far as getting back into the scene again, is this just for the love of the music, or are you trying to pursue it beyond that? As far as I don't even know if record contracts exist anymore, because everybody seems to be doing everything independently. Is there any plans of that as far as building it up to that?
My motivation for this at this age is just to go out and have fun. We want to take it wherever we can take it, and I would like to be one of the A-list bands in Detroit that people want to come and see. I mean, as far as making it or getting a record deal or becoming a big band, I don't have any fantasies about that. But, just to go out and play in Detroit, kind of where I started with the guys I started with.
Sure.
And, and the band is tight. No one's lost up. So it's just about the joy of playing and joy of having people come out and share that with you.
As far as that, being because you're from the old school, have you changed your gear up as far as that? Or are you still hauling around what they hauled around in the 80s, Marshall stacks and big ass equipment? Have you downscaled that at all? Or are you still trying to put up
Well,
that oomph?
actually, I have, because one of the things is that, like, the band that I was in, China Sky, and some of the stuff I did with the Ron Perry Connection tended to be, pretty involved and like layered, full of like different instruments and sounds and things. And there was a lot going on in that. One of the pluses of coming back, and playing with the Nasties is, I could strip it down to just, being a raw rock band. We're three-piece at this point. It's just guitar, bass, and drums, and me singing. And I use my same strats that I've been using for almost 30 years. JCM 800, Marshall JCM 800 half stack, and I use no pedals, no nothing, because
Wow.
a lot of the bands that I used to see in the 70s, when I was underage, sneaking in, they had a guitar and a chord and a Marshall amp,
Yeah.
and that was all they needed, and it
Hmm.
sounded great. And I thought that I need to get back to that.
Are you wireless or are you still using the cord?
No, I'm old school. I'm using a cord. I've tried wireless, and it seems like you lose some attack.
The other thing was you said, the Nasties are a three-piece. Are there any aspirations of expand that, having another guitarist, or like you said, with the change of it all, or is that just outside of the realm of what you want the band to be?
Well, we may add some things when we record, but as far as live performance, I think we're just going to keep it to a power trio and keep it as energetic and upbeat as possible. And plus, like I've always said to everybody in my bands, the less guys in the band, the more money you make.
Yeah, and the less drama too, right?
Yeah, the less drama you have, exactly, one less guy to fight with.
The other thing I wanted to mention to you was, like I say, you had the Nasties, and it kind of went away for a while with these other projects. There are several other bands that I've noticed that have carried on that name. And now I know the spelling's different. Guys, in any way on either streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, any of that.
Well, no, because we haven't recorded anything new. We have is just what's on YouTube from the 80s. We have plans to. I just talked to the guys, this week about doing the Nasties album that we never did in the 80s.
Far as that, and I know it's probably premature to ask too many details about that, would you consider, if you get to that point and you do that, putting it out on, I mean, I know everything nowadays is streaming, everything's, like I say, the streaming platform. As far as putting it out on an actual physical form, as far as like CDs or even vinyl, because I know vinyls come back. That's something that you would consider, or is that too much of an expense?
Well, we'd have to look at it at the point, and maybe kind of take a poll on our Facebook page and see who would be interested in actually buying a vinyl record, because they are fairly expensive to produce. I would love to do that if it's financially feasible.
Sure. Now, as for the band out playing now, and you guys are doing gigs, do you have merchandise that you sell? Do you guys have a Facebook page that people can go out and say, I imagine you might have some things at your shows like T-shirt. Do you have a Facebook page?
We do have a Facebook page. We don't sell the shirts on the Facebook page. You can actually come to the gig to get them. The interesting thing is what we did is the Detroit Rocks project in the 80s, there was a T-shirt associated with it. It had the name of all the participants on it and the WLLZ logo on it, and it said Detroit Rocks on it in big letters, the Nasties on it in big letters. Did a reissue of those shirts. So it's like the original shirt from 1986.
Wow.
And so we've sold quite a few of those with the nostalgia factor.
You still have those for upcoming shows that you might have?
Yeah, we'll have them at every show.
That is so cool. Now, what about video? I mean, because there again, back in the 80s, everything was shot on big ass camcorders. If they did it at all, they sounded like crap. They usually look like crap. Have you got anything, or have you worked on anything as far as video? Because I know video is a big thing now, too, with bands trying to promote their stuff. Are you doing anything as far as that?
Well, yeah, I'm actually in the video business. So we actually, probably 2 years ago, maybe 3, when we first started putting the Nasties back together with Lawrence on drums, we did a video for a song called Piece of Shit, which is it's a joke. It's a funny song. And if you go on YouTube and check out the video is pretty funny too. Kind of that's what we're about. We're about, heavy music, kind of punky attitude, but it's all tongue in cheek. It's all having a good time. It's not about violence or death, any of that kind of stuff. It's about having a good time.
Your themes, so to speak, as far as your songwriting, aren't could be overly political or, as far as right, left, you don't want to get into that territory?
No, we're just, like we're doing commentary,
Okay.
and it's
Yeah.
just kind of funny commentary. In fact, we just finished the song. We just recorded. I'll actually probably start shooting a video next weekend with the band called The American Way. And basically, it's about people on their phone. People have become addicted to their phone. So we got a pretty good idea for a video for that, and that ought to be pretty funny.
Now, as far as shooting a video, do you mean actually shooting a concept type video or something you guys would play live and, in a club somewhere and cut in some clips?
This will all be probably studio stuff. We're planning on recording some shows when we, play a venue that's big enough and kind of has the camera angles we need to get a decent video. Like I said, I'm in the video business. I have a bunch of cameras, done concerts and, music videos and all kinds of stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, we want to do concept videos. The piece of shit video is a concept video.
Right.
Clips of us playing in the studio.
Oh, that's very cool. This studio, is this your studio again? Do you have your own studio?
I have my own audio studio here in Jacksonville, Florida. Yeah.
Oh, so you're in Jacksonville?
I am right now.
You don't even live in this area anymore? Or do you have is it your prime base?
No, I do. I'm a part-timer. I'm back and forth. I'm there like every
okay.
2 months. I'm involved in businesses there. My family and all my friends are still there. So that's the other thing, is that the Nasties gives me an excuse to hang out.
Well, that's always a good thing. And you talk about like place that you can film something live like that. Live albums even a thing anymore? Is that something that there again, not necessarily has to be a live video, but a live album of a performance? Is that something you'd ever consider or want to do? Is that something that you think people are into anymore?
Well, I mean, as far as like an album, we were just having this discussion a couple of weeks ago. I think the live album, as far as a commercial vehicle, is dead because
Right.
People want you to come and see that. That's the only way they make money now, is you come and see their show. So, kind of a live album is a redundancy, and kind of maybe cannibalizes your business. But as far as like live, concert videos, I think that's still a thing. People want to see their favorite artists play the songs live. Like I say, we're going to do probably some live stuff. Maybe next time we play the Token, because the Token, kind of works out for like camera angles and, has enough room where you can actually do something there.
The Token Lounge has come a long way from the old days. They've really gotten up on technology and the sound. They moved the stage, obviously.
Oh yeah, we used to play there when the stage was in the corner.
So they made a massive improvement there. A lot of things. And of course, the Token Lounge now seems to be a bar that you're going to see semi-national acts playing there. What I call 80s hair metal, that they're still out touring, but stars as big as Ace Frehley playing the Token. Who would have ever thunk it?
Well, the thing is that I think rock and roll has come full circle because, in the early days of rock and roll, late 60s or whatever, a band like Cream and Led Zeppelin would come and play the Grandy Ballroom,
right,
which held, maybe 800 people. So it's kind of come full circle where it's not stadium things anymore. And I prefer to see club shows because you're seeing people up close. It's a more intimate setting. To me, I would much rather pay 30 or 40 bucks and go see somebody at a place like the Token Lounge than go to an arena for $200.
Yeah. Well,
I went and saw, I'm having a brain fart now, but anyway, they had a flying piano and they had, pyrotechnics and rockets and all this stuff. I'm going, come and play for 50 bucks and spare me all that shit.
The last thing I was going to ask you about, you say you're in Jacksonville and you kind of come back and forth. Would you consider, if the opportunity was right or you could do something there, of having the Nasties actually play down there? Or do you think that wouldn't be something that would go down in that area very well?
Well, I'd like to bring them down here and play. I mean, I've had a band down here that plays every once in a while, a 3-piece, just power trio, just for fun. But there's not really, in Jacksonville, it doesn't really support original music. There's not really any place to play. It's all cover bars here. But the band that I had down here, we would take to Ville or Tampa or Orlando if we wanted to actually do a real gig. This is a great place to live, low cost of living. But if you're looking for a music scene, this isn't it. This is another reason that I've liked coming back to Detroit and doing the whole thing with the Nasties. And we're going to ramp it up and do an album. And
well, anyway, Ron, I'm going to let you go. I really appreciate you taking the time tonight and talking to me about this. I
appreciate you having me on.
I look forward to seeing the Nasties down the road. Keep in touch with Sherry, obviously, for any upcoming gigs you have in the next month or so I can plug that for you and do whatever I can.
Well, I appreciate you having me on again, and thanks to all the music fans in Detroit for keeping the music scene alive. I would just like to finish by saying, kick out the jams, motherfuckers.
All right, man. Well, you have a good night.
All right, you too. Thanks a lot.
You bet. Take care. It was Ron Perry, lead guitarist, lead vocalist from the band the Nasties, started out in the 80s here in Detroit on the scene. Recorded a song called Detroit Rocks in hopes of bringing the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to Detroit. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. He created a song, got an all-star cast involved, Almighty Strut, guys from Brownsville Station, Weapons, all these different people involved in it. They got together and actually tried to do something. You know, that's a rare thing, man, because like he was saying, it's cutthroat. It's a cutthroat business, and you really got to love what you're doing to stay in it for as long as he has. And I wish him great success and continuing to play and enjoy doing music.
And you won't shut up long enough to hear a word I say. Hey, yeah, you're nothing but a loser and you haven't got a clue. Now, I'm through. Ain't nobody got time for a piece of shit like you. Up in someone else's fault. The choices that you make are getting harder to explain. There must be something missing there inside your tiny brain. It don't take a psychiatrist to see that you're insane. Hey, yeah, you're nothing but a loser and you haven't got a clue. Now, I'm through. Ain't nobody got time for a piece of shit like you. Every time I think for sure that you've hit bottom, there's more stupidness to come. You think you're an aristocrat, but you're really just a bum. And if life's a great big banquet, then you're just a little crumb.
Hey, the Nasties are going to be playing their next show December 20th at the Rex Theater in Mancini, Michigan, which is, about a half hour south of Ann Arbor. Start your Christmas vacation early with special guests Jack Stan and the Incurables. Hey, is that old stereo system of yours giving you the blues? Maybe the receiver has a blown channel or the turntable just doesn't work right. Well, then you should visit my friends at 7 Grand Audio Service. They've been in business for over 40 years. Located at 25642 7 Mile Road, the owner Dash and his assistant Harry can fix just about anything. Receivers, tape decks, turntables, EQs, power amps, and yes, guitar and bass amps. The phone number over there is 313-533-3635. Open Monday through Friday, 10 to 6. You need to check these guys out and let them know Jimmy sent you. Well, anyway, as I like to say, keep rocking.